Wow, look at this cool robot guy. He's kind of funny. Maybe a bit silly. I sure hope nothing bad happens to him. Oh, well, I guess it's time to talk to you about the man they called Cayde. I'll start from the beginning, but it's important to note that a lot of this information is directly from Cayde himself, and he's often less than truthful with his stories, a lot like Callus and Savathun. They're pretty much the only characters who bullshit more than Cayde, so take basically everything in this video as less than fact. If we go back to the beginning of Cayde's first life, that takes place in the Golden Age with an extremely handsome and dreamy man named Cayde. No numbers, just Cayde. As a human, Cayde had a family, a wife, and a son. Maybe, probably not. But I can 100% guarantee that Cayde did have a massive, crippling debt from being extremely dedicated to gambling. And no, I'm not addicted to gambling. I can stop at any time. That big jackpot is coming. I can feel it. Anyways, thanks to a wealthy philanthropist named Clovis Bray, all of Cayde's debts were paid off. For nothing in return, right? Well, other than becoming a lab rat for Clovis Bray and Braytech owning Cayde's physical body and memories and personality, and him being forced to work for no pay by Braytech. So like 99.99% of Exos, his story leads him to Europa, to experience his transformation from man to machine, human to Exo, within the deep stone crypt. Before and after his transformation, Cayde would keep a journal. Some entries addressing his possibly non-existing son. This journal would give him the opportunity to remember parts of who he was, even after becoming an Exo. After Clovis Bray would reset his mind, wiping all of his memories over and over again. And even after becoming a Guardian, Cayde's journal would serve as a reminder of who he was. Or who he wanted himself to be. After being a security guard for the Eventide colony on Europa, Cayde would be cool enough to be promoted by Clovis Bray to be the personal bodyguard of a leader of a competing research-based megacorporation, Dr. Maya Sandaresh of the Ishtar Collective. And during his time with the Ishtar Collective, Cayde would develop a whittle quash on Dr. Sandaresh. Problem is, she never really noticed him, and she was married. And it probably doesn't help that she was married to a woman. Anyways, Cayde died in the collapse and was engulfed by shadowy creatures. Until he wasn't dead anymore. The exo body of Cayde-6 was revived by Sundance, to then run directly off a cliff. And don't worry, Cayde, we all have those days. Cayde would read his journal and would keep writing in it, addressing the entries to Ace, or Cayde-7. Cayde at this point was pretty sure mostly everything about his past life is fake and made up by himself, but he would choose to believe in his queen and his Ace, to motivate himself, to be a better person, and to be brave all the way to the end. Before finding a group of hunters to start a boy band with, Cayde had a solo career. Mara paid him to find the Vault of Glass, and he was known to take nearly any bet or dare, including one from Banshee, that led Cayde to jumping off of cliffs on Io during a funeral, breaking his legs in the process. Oh yeah, and the silliest adventure of them all, the Great Disaster. Basically, Crota slammed the Guardian forces on the moon, and Cayde was there, and he teamed up with a fallen Baroness to survive. They would cut through the hive until the Baroness would become injured, and Bungie forgot to give Cayde infinite primary ammo, so the Baroness would offer him her last shock pistol. At the same time, she would slowly move her blades towards Cayde. As a reflex, he slit her throat. A moment that would stick with him for a long time. Did the Baroness want Cayde dead? Or, more likely, was that she wanted Cayde to mercy kill her. Cayde would soon find a group of hunters to hang out with. The three main ones were Cayde, Andal Brask, and Shiro 4. Cayde would grow close to Andal and mentor Shiro 4. The three would raid caches, lead people to the city, and hunt Fallen. In fact, the trio was so good at the last thing that a massive bounty was placed on their heads for Glimmer and Ether. Also, Andal had a cool theory that Cayde was Rasputin. Wrong exo there, buddy. And everything would go great for them, and nothing would go wrong. Here's one example of a successful mission they went on. The three hunters let a couple more hunters into their small crew. Lush, a young hunter that Shiro had been mentoring, and I'm going to screw this up, Nian Ruo. Andal would clear some caches alone to the west, while everyone else would stick together to raid caches. Unfortunately, this is when that massive bounty caught up to them. At this time, many hunters told stories of a fallen boogeyman who killed guardians, belonged to no house, and couldn't die. Well, Cayde didn't believe this story, and his team was really good at killing Fallen, so what's so scary about a Fallen with no house? Well, this is when he found out. This is when Cayde would first meet Taniks the Scarred. In an ambush, Taniks and his crew jumped Cayde's group, injuring Cayde and Shiro. Lush would lose his ghost, and Nian ultimately died. Not long after the ambush, Cayde and Andal would go to the bar to have some drinks, as they often did. Andal would get drunk, and Cayde couldn't get drunk, due to the whole being a robot and all. Anyways, this time was different. The previous Hunter Vanguard had been missing for like 2 years, and recently, they were just assumed dead. The speaker had also told the hunters to sort out the Vanguard issue themselves because they just kind of kept dying. So, at some point in the night, Cayde and Andal agreed to track down and kill Taniks. Whoever got the final blow would be free to be a hunter in the field. The loser would have to hang up the gloves and take the mantle of Hunter Vanguard. And time was ticking for the Dare. Osiris had spoken to his father-in-law about Saint targeting Taniks. If Saint had gotten there first, the Dare couldn't be completed. Shiro would join the duo in tracking down Taniks. But in the end, he knew this battle was for Cayde and Andal to fight. Lush would try to join in the fun, but was told to stay behind and live his final life. Eventually, Cayde and Andal would track down Taniks. Cayde would deal the final blow, sealing Andal's fate. Cayde would plead with Andal, telling him that he didn't have to go through with it. But to Andal, his word was more important than anything. So he took the L and became the Hunter Vanguard, and Cayde, he felt betrayed, or guilty. His actions, him killing Taniks, made his best friend, his mentor, the greatest hunter he'd ever known, sit in the tower, rotting away for the rest of his days. During this time, Andal would give Cayde and Shiro the best bounties and tip them off for some sweet Vanguard level loot. Of course, Cayde would pay his friend a finder's fee. Things were good for a while, until Taniks came back. Andal Brask was murdered by the Elixni, and Cayde would take that spot of Hunter Vanguard in Andal's honor, because in his eyes, he never won in the first place. If you know anything about Cayde, you'd know he couldn't stand being in the tower, let alone being there as much as the Vanguard position demanded. Shiro was now the last member of their fire team left in the wild. During his time in the tower, he would become close friends with Amanda Holiday and command the hunters. Two of the main hunters he would call on for assignments were, of course, his friend Shiro 4, and one of the last remaining Night Stalkers, Tevis, who would be indebted to Cayde for very unclear reasons. Time would pass, and eventually a guardian would rise, a guardian that Saint had prophesized would be their savior, and apparently also helped him at the Twilight Gap centuries before their own resurrection. Eventually, this guardian would catch Cayde's eye, after destroying the Black Heart, raiding the Vault of Glass, and slaying Crota. Oh yeah, also this guardian killed Taniks, so there's that too. When Oryx arrived in the Sol system, Cayde would step up and lead the attack on the Dreadnought with the advisement of Eris Morn. We were chosen by Cayde to do this, such as protecting the war mine, penetrating Oryx's defenses, establishing a beachhead, and investigating the Cabal's plans on the Dreadnought. Oh yeah, and ultimately killing Oryx. To penetrate Oryx's defenses, you needed a stealth drive, and Cayde had one stashed away from back when he went on solo missions. So you get that stealth tech, you give it to Cayde, and he attaches it to Eris's ship without saying anything to her. You pilot it, ship gets destroyed by Oryx, so Cayde owes Eris Morn a new ship. He doesn't pay that debt for a long time. I'm not 100% sure this is all still canon or not, but during the SIVA-like virus called Transmission that infected Guardians, Cayde was extremely against quarantine. Then during the SIVA crisis in the Plague Lands, Cayde decided the nanomachine plague would figure itself out. So he sent Shiro 4 to oversee it with Lord Saladin. He had nothing to do with it. Eventually, Cayde's prayers would be answered, and he would once again see battle, and not be tied down to his desk job. This was the Red War. Gaul attacked the last city, killed countless civilians and guardians, and suppressed the Traveler's Light. Cayde would travel to Nessus and steal some Vex tech. His plan was to set up a Vex teleporter, walk through it, shoot Gaul, eat sandwich. Our guardian put two brain cells together and said, hey, that won't work. That's just a dumb idea. Well, actually, the ghost said that. It was at the beginning of our year-long vow of silence. Anyways, you convince him to meet up with Zavala and help get Ikora to organize a good plan to retake the city and the light. They go to the farm, Cayde adopts a chicken, and they all hatch a plan to save the Traveler. Cayde uses his pet chicken, the Colonel, as a distraction to take out guards, then helps us with the Vex teleporter after he loses an arm, and we kill Gaul, and now the city is reclaimed Earth. And after the Red War, as far as Vanguard duties go, Cayde does less. Leading the occasional strike or setting up some patrols, mostly he needs you to track down his old stashes for him. But in the meantime, Cayde is hard at work with Petrovenge to imprison Uldren Sov, and all the Scorn in the Reef, the Barons being of high priority. Cayde also speaks to a former Shadow of Yore about a new form of training and competition for Guardians, called Gambit. This after Cayde may or may not have been visited by the Nine. Anyways, something happens to Cayde's voice before he asks you to join him in helping Petrovenge stop a prison riot in the Prison of Elders. Unfortunately, Cayde was using trip mines instead of healing nades, and he would ask for Sundance to help heal him, opening up a shot for the rifleman to destroy his ghost. Cayde was now mortal, but in the face of death, welcomes it. I'm coming home, Ace. Cayde would be incapacitated and then shot by Uldren. After Cayde mocked the Awoken Prince over the presumed death of his sister, hey, got him. Cayde would die in the arms of our guardian, and his last words were, and I quote, "Subscribe to Spycer, like this video, and follow Spycer Live on Twitch for cool epic poggers live streams." End quote. Our guardian would soon break their vow of silence before going on a John Wick-style rampage through the Tangled Shore and Dreaming City to kill Aldrin and avenge the Hunter Vanguard. Cayde willed us the Ace of Spades, his trusted hand cannon, which proved really good in Crucible. Shiro would return, not on screen, of course, because we can't have that, to lead Cayde's funeral, leaving him to be the last of his old crew. And the words he spoke at Cayde's funeral would lead to hunters across the system to hide and avoid the possibility of the Vanguard Dare at all costs. Cayde's death led to many events occurring throughout the system. The Dreaming City was open to Guardians for the first time. We took our revenge and walked down Sorrow's Road with the assistance of Shin Malphur and the Drifter. We took our first steps towards understanding the darkness. Aldrin would be revived as Crow and would look up to and be inspired by Cayde's story. Ikora, still burdened with the self-imposed guilt over Cayde's death, had been haunted by the nightmare of Cayde during Calus's ascension to disciplehood. During Season of the Wish, as we're working to help Riven regain custody of her kids, the Crow made a wish to the dead dragon. He accidentally wished that he could apologize to Cayde for what Aldrin Sov did to him. And as a caveat to Crow's wish, Cayde's voice would go back to how it was before the weird cold he had in the Prison of Elders. And now, an old friend will guide us in the Pale Heart to end the Witness's final shape. Rest in peace, Cayde. See you soon.